Let me show you the fastest way to farm all ship engineering materials in Elite Dangerous Odyssey. First, I'll show you how big brain commanders like to farm any raw material they need right next to the bubble. You'll never need to get out of your ship, which greatly speeds up the process. The encoded material grind is actually quite easy and can be done in one single location. Ironically, there's even a grade 2 through 4 raw material grind here as well that a lot of commanders don't even utilize. Last but not least, I'll show you all of the system states as well as the government types you need to look for in order to find all of the manufactured grade 5 materials you could ever need. To effectively farm raw materials, you'll need a ship with a really good jump range, a cargo rack, a fuel scoop to refuel, and be very collector heavy. You will also want to take a detailed surface scanner along with you. This helps you to easily find the brain trees that we're after. In order to blow up the brain trees, you're going to need something like a remote release flak launcher, and do yourself a favor, if this is your first time out there, get 4 of them, because you won't have the raw materials to synthesize ammo quite yet. Commanders, everything will be timestamped for your convenience, and our very first stop is going to be HR 3230. We're mostly going for the grade 4 raw material Selenium, but you can also find Technetium here as well. You'll want to head over to the moon 3AA and set your course directly there. Once you arrive to the moon and you're close enough, you'll want to probe the surface. After the probing is complete, a little signals filter list will pop up. Make sure you always leave that on brain trees. As you're coasting down to the surface, you're going to notice that the textures kind of change. You're going to have a bluish grainy area, and then you're going to have an area that looks bluish green and it's really smooth. To have the best chance at finding dense population of brain trees, go to the bluish green area. Make sure you disable the power to all of your flak launchers except for one, and make sure you have all of your fire groups set for your flak launcher as well as your collector limpets. Now, this method is actually quite fun and far more big brain than how we used to farm these back in the day. But ultimately, you just kind of fly around until you find a nice group of brain trees. Pressing and holding your fire group button will actually fire the flak launcher, and as soon as you let go of the button, it'll explode. One of the biggest issues with farming brain trees is your collector limpets, they get stuck all over them, but there's an easy remedy for that. If you just back up and get out of render distance, well, that solves the problem because all of the loot is there, but none of your limpets are going to get stuck on those brain trees anymore. Now, when you're out here farming these brain trees, you're going to be getting a lot of the top tier grade 4 raw materials, but you're also going to get some of the lower grade materials as well. This moon is also an anomaly that I'm about to show you because you don't just get Selenium here, you can also find Technetium. All the other raw material locations, you can only get that specific raw material there. Just a little ways away around that crater rim, I found another large pack of the brain trees. I'm expecting Selenium because I have never in my life seen 2 different grade 4 materials spawn so close together. To my surprise, it was Technetium, and what that did is it set up an instance where I could farm both patches, log out of the game completely, then log right back in and farm the patches up all over again. It literally only took me about 15 minutes to load up on Selenium and Technetium. Well, that's awesome, Hawks, but say I only need Technetium and I don't need Selenium. Well, if that's the case, then head over to this system here, Moon A1A. You won't have any problem getting Technetium here. I probed the surface. Probing's cool. Just like with the previous method, you're going to find yourself a nice bluish green smooth patch to fly down to, look for a gigantic group of brain trees, and blow them all up into little teeny tiny smithereenies. Just like the other location, you're going to find lower grade materials here, but the only grade 4 material you're going to find here is Technetium. Just make sure to de-render the brain trees before your little collector limpets get in there, or they're going to blow themselves up. I reckon we don't need any more tungsten. Eventually, you're going to load up on some of the lower grade materials, and in order to not tie up all your limpets all day long collecting a bunch of crap you don't need, you might want to add them to the ignore list. Whenever you find a really good patch, I just highly recommend that you log out to the desktop and right back into the game and farm until you're full. Our next stop will be for Antimony, and you can find that in system HIP 34958. You'll want to head over to Moon AB1A. It's off the very first gas giant. Here in a little while, Commanders, I'm going to share with you my ultimate weapon on how to track down these raw materials, and it's so precise that you can literally land in the exact location and they're always there. Up until this moment, I've just flown down and found all the brain tree clusters myself and farmed everything I need. This location I'm about to show you has been dubbed by other Commanders as the Snowman's Crater. Before I even drop in here, I know exactly where to go in order to find a whole bunch of clusters of brain trees, and they all drop antimony. Now you can make the personal choice to go out there and find all these brain tree clusters yourself, or you can go to the exact location this Reddit post shows you that is extremely highly detailed and get exactly what you want. Death from above is just so much more appealing than having to land down on the surface, get in your SRV, and hunt and peck for the grade 4 material you're looking for. If you head over to the Snowman's Crater, it's not going to take you very long to top off on antimony. There's like 4 patches that are really super close together. Alright, now that was super fast. I only had to log out to the desktop and back in one time. That's how quick I was able to fill up my antimony. Our next stop is for Ruthenium, and the really cool thing about that is it's located in the exact same system really close by at moon AB1DA. We'll be heading down to the crater at the bottom left, and the easiest way to find that is to actually get in analysis mode. Just off to the right hand side, there will be a crater that has a box shape around it. Pay special attention to my approach because I'm attempting to land directly on top of a patch of brain trees according to this Reddit post. The last time I dropped in for antimony, I got really close, but this time I believe I'm going to drop right directly on top of them. And there they are right there, and realistically that means you don't even need a detailed surface scanner if you know exactly where to go. There are actually 7 large patches that give you Ruthenium here right around this crater. Just like the other locations, you're going to get a lot of those low-grade raw materials as well as the Ruthenium. Even if you are completely empty, you will not need to exit the game and log back in to refresh all the spawns more than one time. The main reason why I say exit to desktop all the way and then come right back in again instead of going to the main menus is that occasionally when you exit to the main menus and back in again, it does not refresh the spawn fully. So if you want to make sure that you're getting repeatable results with each reload, just make sure you're exiting the game all the way. I mean, it's sad that playing the reloading simulator is literally the fastest way to farm any of the materials you need in Elite Dangerous. Raw materials are no different. Our next stop is for Tellurium in the Synuefe system, moon 1A1A. At this point, I'm really getting into the feels of being that cheesy commander who knows exactly where to go, so let's just go there using that Reddit post. On one hand, I really enjoy locating these brain trees on my own and finding the stuff completely and totally by random, but I also enjoy engineering ships, and if you can find the stuff super duper quick and know exactly where to go, then I mean, why not do it? In this area, right next to that little hill over towards the left, there are 4 brain tree patches here. They are so close together that you can blow up all 4 of the patches and then just send out an army of collector limbus to get all your Tellurium. This is how much Tellurium I got before I even exited the game once. Now that's a lot of Tellurium for 4 little patches, so as you can imagine, I didn't even have to farm up the rest of them because I didn't even have enough room before I topped off my Tellurium. Our next stop is for Polonium. It will be in a different Synuefe system at planet A2. Now this is one of the easier locations to find. Once you get above the planet's surface, locate the 3 large craters. I'll be heading just to the right side of the crater. There will be a discoloration. It kind of looks like a grayish green right up next to a red. Just fly right in exactly where I'm going. Kind of close to the edge of that crater and near those 2 discolorations where they meet, there will be 3 Polonium patches. 3 Polonium patches do not sound like a lot, but since they're in close proximity to each other and you know exactly where to go, I only had to exit to main menus, back in again 2 times to farm up all the Polonium that I needed. Cha-ching! Our last stop for raw materials will be Yttrium in yet another Synuefe system. You'll want to head over to moon AB1C at the very first gas giant. The orbit of these 2 celestial bodies are actually kind of cool. They're really close together and they look like a pair of floating space balls in space. Now this location isn't the easiest one to find, so first locate the gigantic crater right next to the ice sheet. You're looking for a particular crater. Now there are quite a few little ones all around, but one of them almost looks like the Pepsi logo. Right now I'm flying directly at it, and it has a very light discoloration on that right side that fills up about half the crater. If you're flying towards the ice sheet, just fly right past that crater, and you're going to see this little grouping of 3 craters right here. Right at the very end of that 3rd crater, there will be 3 clusters of brain tree plants. All of them will give you Yttrium. If you can find the Pepsi crater, then you can find this location. Some of these farming locations won't have a fleet carrier nearby, so if you completely run out of ammo, at this point you're going to need to synthesize it on your own. Being this deep in, you shouldn't have a problem. Since I knew exactly where to go to get this Yttrium, and I only had to log out to the desktop 2 times, it took me 15 minutes to top off. Now that we've topped off all the way with all the grade 4 materials, let's head over to the material trader. My go-to place is in Fong Wing at Shackner Dock. While the Thargoid War is going on, it would be a good idea to make sure that you don't venture too close to Thargoid-controlled territory, and if you do, definitely make a course correction. When you land, you'll want to hit up the Starport services, and from there you'll click on the Contacts tab, and then go directly to the Material Trader. On your very first round of collecting raw materials, you actually got quite a few of the lower grade raw materials already. What you want to do now is trade for the lower grade materials using your higher grade materials and trade down in a horizontal path. Never trade raw materials in a diagonal because that actually causes you to lose quite a bit of your materials. Eventually you're going to trade down and top off all of the materials that are grade 1 through 3, and you're only going to be left with needing to go back out there one more time to top off all of your grade 4s. Here's that absolutely amazing Reddit post I was talking about. They give you all the system locations, all of the coordinates. It shows you exactly where to go to find that specific grade 4 raw material that you're looking for. If that's not enough, they actually have an image suite where you can just go right on in there and click on these images and know exactly where you need to go. I'm not even kidding, you don't even need a detailed surface scanner when you're armed with this information. There you go, Commanders, that is the raw material grind. Now let's start the encoded. In order to start the encoded material grind, you will need a ship capable of carrying an SRV. The entire material grind can be completed in one system, which is HIP 12099. This location is fondly known as Jameson Memorial and has a lot to do with Elite Dangerous' lore. You'll want to head over to Moon 1B. It's going to be a lot easier on you to find the Jameson crash site if you take a detailed surface scanner and probe the planet. After the great probing, you'll be able to open up your navigational panel, and from there the Jameson crash site will be one of the icons that you can select. Just throwing it out there, most of the time when you come out here to farm Encoded, you are going to be doing it in the dark because most of the time the moon is always going to be in the shadow of the gas giant. The other cool thing about this location, if you do need some raw materials, there is molybdenum and germanium right nearby. They'll all be located on these geological vents right nearby the Jameson crash site. In your navigation panel, they will show up as crystalline fragments. In this video, I showed you the raw material grind first, but in reality, I actually farmed some of these raw materials here before I even started that grind. When you pull up to the back of Jameson's crashed Sidewinder, you're going to want to pull up to right about here, and then you're able to stop and scan your very first encoded beacon. After I scan the first beacon with my data link scanner, what I like to do is get into the turreted mode of this SRV. I will then turn left, and just a little ways away there is another comms control beacon that you can scan. Just a little further away to the left, you're going to find another comms control panel, and guess what? You can scan that one too. We'll complete about a 3/4 turn more to the left, and we come to our final comms control panel that I can scan. You can get 4 different encoded materials here, with the most common being the grade 4 and the grade 5. In order to refresh all the encoded spawns, all you have to do is log out to the main menu and then log right back into the game again. Commander, I highly recommend that you do this in either group or solo play, because if you don't, you're freaking gonna get ganked over and over. It's also worth mentioning that every single time you get a report of a successful scan, you're actually getting 3 encoded materials with each of those scans. Couple that with the fact that the most common drop is the grade 4 and the grade 5, you are going to fill up extremely quickly here. If you haven't heard any of the lore because you're new, then make sure you scan the Crash Sidewinder. You'll be making a lot of back and forth trips, so make sure you favorite HIP 12099, the actual crash site, as well as Ray Gateway. Once you've landed at Ray Gateway, hit up the System Services and then click on the Contacts tab. From there, you guessed it, we're going directly to the Material Trader. Trading for Encoded is a little bit different than doing it for Raw, because Raw you can always trade down on the horizontal path, which gives you the very best value. The Grade 4 atypical and Grade 5 adaptive encryption files are so common that they drop like candy. On each trip to Material Trader, make sure you always fill up with the atypical and adaptives. You're going to use that to trade for basically everything. This is where your basically comes into play. You're going to be getting a decent amount of modified as well as cracked industrial firmware. About every third trip, you're going to need to trade those up and down on the horizontal in order to fill up that entire row. You will be able to fill up your entire encoded firmware row on the horizontal by the time you're able to trade for everything else using the atypical and adaptive. Commanders, you can complete the raw material grind in an afternoon. By comparison, if you want to go from fully empty to fully loaded down with encoded materials, well, it's going to take you 6 times longer to complete that task. The only good news is, once you're loaded down, it's much easier to maintain. It is now time to begin the manufactured materials grind. Research is key, so head over to inara.cz, search for nearest, and then click on the Star Systems tab. Our first stop is looking for Pharmaceutical Isolators, one of the most brutal ones to look for, so make sure you set the controlling faction state to Outbreak. You also want to make sure that you search for systems that have at least 1 million people within it. The higher population, the better. Before we do our next search, pay special attention to the star system names. Heading back to Inara, this time we're going to check the minor factions. We're also going to select Outbreak and as high a population as possible. Once you have that all sorted, click on search, and now what we're looking for is similar system names. And why looky there, Tau Buddhist has 2 minor factions as well as the controlling faction that is suffering from an outbreak, so we're going to go there. Now you can kind of sort of in a way do this in Elite Dangerous as long as you turn off all the other systems and then just toggle the outbreak so you can actually see them. You won't get any of the minor faction data like you can from inara.cz, but at least you can verify that the controlling faction that you're going into is at least an outbreak. In order to fill up on all of our manufactured quickly, we're going to be specifically targeting what is called a high-grade emission. In order to find these high-grade emissions quickly, you need to locate the nav beacon, which is right next to every single star. The act of looking at it and targeting it will actually scan it. Once you have completely scanned the nav beacon, every single unidentified signal source will be revealed. Get into Super Cruise mode, and once you're in Super Cruise mode, you can check your navigation panel and look for high-grade emissions. If the high-grade emission happens to be an outbreak, well, that means you're going to be looting Pharmaceutical Isolators by the boatload. Ideally, you'll want to have as much time as you possibly can to loot these. It looks like I'm only going to have about 12 minutes once we drop in. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that you're going to need a ship that has a cargo rack as well as collector limpets in order to pull this off. No combat is involved in this farming method. You basically just need to drop into the high-grade emission, open up your cargo scoop, let out your limpets, and they'll collect all the loot for you. Now that we have everything, it's time to play the reloading simulator by logging out to the desktop and back into the game again. In order to find the high-grade emission again, you will need to get back into Super Cruise. Once you are back in Super Cruise, open up your navigation panel and target the nearest unidentified signal source. In most cases, the high-grade emission source will be directly behind you, so you'll have to turn back around, target the source, and then you're going to be able to almost drop right back in immediately. I'm going to be doing this until I completely and totally run out of time and that signal source disappears on me. Sadly, I'm not going to be able to fill up on this run once the time runs out, but I will get relatively close. I really wish I could remember the commander's name that hopped into my Discord when I was filming this video as well as my best start, because man, he opened my eyes to also researching the minor faction. It really does up your odds as a commander in finding that exact material that you're after. Half of the factions in this system are actually suffering from outbreak, but the other half, well, they're not, and they might spawn a different high-grade emission. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to top off in that last system, so I hopped over to the next one. Styx is also suffering from an outbreak. Every single time the server refreshes missions, it takes about every 10 minutes or so, these HGEs have a chance to spawn. Once they spawn, they'll start with about 40 minutes and then start counting down. Looks like we don't have much time on that one. Heck yeah, there's another high grade. Let's hope it's an outbreak, and it definitely is. Let's go there. That'll be plenty of time for me to top off. Our first system, we use research to find the Pharmaceutical Isolator, and in sticks, I actually use the in-game mechanics from Elite Dangerous. Time to scarf up some military-grade alloys. They can be best found in systems controlled by the Federation, which are also in a system state of civil war. Searching by higher population is always best because you have more chances to spawn HGEs. You really want to look at multiple minor factions that are in the state of civil war. Choosing a system that has 2 factions or more really ups your odds in finding what you're after. We're going to hop right into the system, head over to the nav beacon and scan it, then check and see if there's any high-grade emissions available. If there isn't, we'll check Inara and go to the next system, and if there is, well, hopefully it has enough time for us to scarf it all up, and it looks like it does. Later in the video, we'll be hitting up the material trader, and military-grade alloys is a really good choice if you want to do any cross-trading. If you're in Federation space, you can definitely count on there being civil wars happening all over the place in high-population systems. Although logging out is key to this process of farming all these HGEs quickly, this will literally be the last time that I show this in the video. Every time you farm everything up, you're going to be logging out to the desktop, right back in again, dropping into the HGE and farming right up until the moment you top everything off. Proto heat radiators can be found in any system state that is in boom, with one exception. Avoid any system that is in allegiance to the Alliance, because that can actually drop something else and you don't want that. I'm just going to go over and check out Procyon. It had a really high population and it's in boom, so let's check it out. I scanned the beacon in Procyon and it looks like there's at least one high grade emission here, and unfortunately that won't be enough time to get anything accomplished. Let's scroll down the navigation panel. Looks like there's a couple more, and that one is most definitely enough time. You need about 20 to 25 minutes to be able to fully farm these. Proto heat radiators are one of the easiest HGEs to farm because they are literally everywhere. There are so many systems that are going to be in boom, and as long as it's not an Alliance system, because they drop something else, which I'll show later in the video. I ended up farming this HGE multiple times, and the unfortunate event that happens to me, it seems like all the freaking time, I end up getting 99 of 100, and I have to go out and find another HGE somewhere. Screw that, I'm just going to settle for 99 right now. Improvised components can be found in systems that have an allegiance to independent as well as suffering from civil unrest. These components can be found at any economy type, although I do seem to have a little better luck when I go to high-tech systems. Maka is suffering from civil unrest and it's relatively close, so let's go there. We immediately find a high-grade emission. Let's hope it's going to be civil unrest, and it is. This one's going to be really close on time though. And here I'll sum up that fun for you. I broke my net, farmed everything, got to 99 once again, and had to go somewhere else to get the 100th one. Yeah. Military supercapacitors can best be found in systems that are in allegiance to the independents as well as in a state of war. It also doesn't hurt to check the minor factions to see if any of them have beef as well, and pick the system that has the most beef going on. The controlling faction and 3 minor factions are all at war here at Ayabulu, so let's definitely go there. This system is currently experiencing war as well as civil war, so I might not find exactly what I'm after with enough time. So that was a war with 14 minutes. There's a civil war. There's another civil war. This is going to suck. Let's hope there's another high-grade emission, and there isn't, so we're kind of screwed here. Ultimately, I had to farm 3 different HGEs in order to top off all my improvised components, and you can guess it, I got to 99 on the second one and had to find the third one to top off. Imperial Shielding can be found in any system that has an allegiance to the Empire as well as a state of none. While you're at it, you might as well just check minor factions as well. Imperial Shielding drops like freaking candy because the system state of none is actually extremely common. As long as you're in Empire space, you're not going to have any problems finding these. Imperial Shielding is generally my go-to for the material trader for all my cross-trading needs, just because it freaking drops like crazy, and I'm not even kidding you. Core dynamic composites can be found in systems with an allegiance to the Federation as well as the system state of none. This is another system state as long as you're in Federation. That is extremely common, so you should not have any problems finding these. You know, as long as we can actually find a high-grade emission, and there one is. Let's hope it is going to be a status of none. It is, so we definitely have enough time here. At this point, I only have one more type of HGE to farm for once we completely top off with these core dynamic composites. The other 2, we're going to either have to do missions to get them, or we're going to have to cross-trade like crazy. Proto-Radiolic alloys can be found in systems that are aligned with the Alliance. They also have a high-tech economy, a high population, and they are also in a state of boom. This is a pretty specific search, so if you go to any other systems that are in boom, your chances are you're going to find something different. Let's head over to GD140. It fits all the criteria, high population and boom, as well as Alliance. Proto-Radiolic and Proto-Heat Radiators, just they kind of overlap each other in system states, but if you definitely search where I'm telling you to search, you'll have a much better opportunity to find these Proto-Radiolic alloys when you're actually looking for them. And there we go, that didn't take all that long today. Let's go to the material trader. My go-to place for manufactured material trading is in Timbalderis at the Levi Gateway. Trading your manufactured materials is very similar to trading your raw materials. Now there's going to be an exception to this rule with the biotech conductors as well as the exquisite focus crystals. You can only obtain those through mission rewards, so we're going to have to trade on the vertical. Starting with the chemical row, we're going to be trading everything down in a horizontal fashion. Doing so will give us the most value for our trades. We're going to be doing this with every single row in order to fill up all of our grade 1 through grade 4 materials, using that grade 5 to just stock up completely. Once you have traded everything that you can possibly trade, you really need to decide for yourself, are you going to want to outfit another ship to do some missions, or are you just going to want to cross trade on the vertical? I find that it's much faster to just bite the bullet and trade on the vertical with your other grade 5 mats in order to get the grade 5 mats that you're after. Now there's only a few occurrences that I recommend you do that, and that's with the biotech conductors as well as the exquisite focus crystals, or you're having a really hard time trying to find pharmaceutical isolators, although they don't seem to be as hard to find as they used to. I recommend just up trading and then trading down to fill up those last 2 rows because it's faster than doing missions. With multiple farming trips and trades at the material trader, you're going to eventually max out all of your manufactured materials. Congratulations, Commander. At this point, you can engineer multiple ships into anything that you want. FDev has already announced that there are changes incoming to engineering soon. If there are any changes on how we farm these materials in Elite Dangerous Odyssey, I'll be sure to make an updated video. All my love to my Patreon and YouTube channel supporters. You are the most glorious commanders out there. Peace.